Network.
Thank you for tuning in for this edition of Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali. I am attorney Zulu Ali with the Justice Watch crew, Rosa Nunez, Michael Bilal Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Andrea Rodeman. This week, like every week, we'll be discussing critical legal and social justice issues that are impacting our community. This week, we'll be discussing the school shootings, and we'll also talk a little bit about the critical race theory. And joining us in our discussion today, again, inviting Brother Richard Johnson, who is an educator and teacher at Chafee Joint Unified School District. So thank you for coming back, man, and blessing us with your presence.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. But at any rate, what I wanted to do on this school shooting, I mean, I think it was maybe Wednesday of last week at Timberview High School in Arlington, Texas. A young man by the name of Timothy Simpkins, who was an 18-year-old student at the school, actually came in and began to shoot at people in school. It appears that there were 4 or 5 victims. I know at least 2 of them were shot, and the rest of them were hospitalized or taken to the hospital. One of the victims was a 15-year-old boy. The other one actually was, I see here, a 25-year-old man. I'm not sure. And then there's also another teenage girl. Um, so, I mean, it's here we are again, with the issue of these school shootings. It seemed like they don't stop. Um, I mean, it's obviously something that we haven't been dealing with in the past. But one of the things that really struck me about it is when they spoke with this young man's parents, the parents began to start, um, talking about the fact that this young man had actually been bullied. They talked about things about them taking his money and taking things from him, and basically he was just basically going to school and trying, they're trying to protect themselves. I mean, the parents made it quite clear that they're not justifying the actions, but they are making it clear that this young man was um being bullied. And that's another thing that we've been hearing a lot of, about the issue about people, about students being bullied. So I guess my question is, I mean, how prevalent is this bullying situation in schools today?
This is a situation that is very serious. I know at Ontario High School, where I am, and Chafee Joint Union High School district, they have several outlets
Mhm.
for kids and numbers to call. We try to give them as many outlets in terms of resources on campus for them to seek help if this type of behavior
Mhm.
against them is
Right.
occurring.
Mhm.
That goes to say how much the school is actually making that information readily available
Right.
for our students if these type of things are happening. But this is a huge issue that's happening across the country.
I mean,
Hmm.
what's crazy is that bullying, you know, has been around and part of, I guess, for a lack of a better term, part of our culture and a part of our fabric. I mean, I remember watching Leave It to Beaver. You remember Eddie Haskell?
Right.
What he used to do to Beaver.
Mm.
Yes,
The
sir.
bullies. I mean, that, even in the Little Rascals, you had bullies, and it's not like it's something that's new. So I'm trying to figure out, how does this bullying situation nowadays any different than it really was in the past? Of course, I mean, what's going on? I mean, how does that, is there a change? Is it because of social media? Is it, I mean, I'm trying to, and I'm gonna probably ask another question, which is a question that was texted to me, not texted me, but emailed to me. That's going to be a little controversial, but I mean, why all of a sudden now everybody wants to just shoot everybody when they're being bullied, or uh, what's going on?
Well, a lot of our mindset for our kids, we have to understand what they're being fed.
Mm-hmm.
Our outlets in terms of media,
Mm-hmm.
um, television, radio. These things are things that are made known that are readily accessible to them, which they are being taught to handle situations with violence.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something that we see, especially on our movie screens or all the television shows, Netflix, Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
This is something in our music that has become a thing where, especially for our males,
Hmm.
we were taught the difference. We were taught,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you can handle it with these two fists
Right.
if something goes down. But you live to see tomorrow.
Right.
Now the situation is, hey, well, we have a lot of gunplay, and that there's no coming back from that. And the reality of that is that a lot of our children don't understand true termination.
Right.
When you're terminated, you're gone.
Right.
That's not a thing that you come back from.
Exactly.
Well, I would just add to your point, Richard. I think what has changed is the social acceptance of the use of violence.
Mm.
When you see it coming from the top leadership in this country and it becomes a part of the social fabric, I think people are using violence now because they feel that they have much more of an open door to use it, and other mechanisms have not been put in place to give alternatives. So people are saying, I'm going to do what I've got to do. And it is what it is.
Wow. I mean, that's kind of interesting. Now, the question that was asked that I got as far as the email, and it was actually a friend of mine. I mean, is it are we just too sensitive? Are our kids just more sensitive now?
I don't believe that
Hmm.
they're more sensitive. I think that they they're more independent in terms of being by themselves and being alone. They can turn on their computers. They can go in the room and isolate. Back in the day, and we've all been there when mom and dad said, "Hey, you got to get outside. You got to go play, and you have to understand how to deal with other people." My daughter's the only child, and this is the first year she's at University of Laverne, and she has her own uh, dorm now.
Mm-hmm.
She has a single, and she has her own restroom, and that was just a big deal for her. She says, "Dad,
Hmm.
well, I'm a only child, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to share too much."
Right.
Right? But
Yes,
and
sir.
I had to say, well, wow, and I had to look at myself and say, well, wait a minute, well, that throws conflict resolution right out the window.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're
Mm.
simply talking here is conflict resolution, and that's not a child thing. That thing's happening with adults right now.
Right.
We can look at our relationships, whether it's romantic or whether it's friends. Our ability to resolve conflict
Mm-hmm.
is a lost art.
Yeah.
We don't
It
talk about that anymore.
it is, and you know what? You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and actually, conflict resolution is one of Doc's specialties. That's
Mhm.
one of his areas of expertise as far as conflict and dispute resolution, and our coping skills. I mean, we just don't. I'm in part again. I'm a true believer, and I may be wrong, but I do believe the way we relate to each other as human beings, especially when we talk about social media, and I think that has an impact on how we deal with things, because that's how people relate to each other now. I mean,
Yes.
it's like people have thousands and thousands and thousands of friends on social media, and they're not friends, they're just people that they talk to on the internet. And when it comes to socializing and communication skills, I know that even, in as an employer dealing with younger employees, that oftentimes there's a disconnect with the communications. They can't really
Hmm.
express themselves and communicate, and resolution of conflict, is something that, I think is lacking. Right.
Well, to your point, Brother Ali, spot on. Look, when you have the degree of trauma that you have in society today, that trauma leads to an individual not being able to deal with their own self conflict. How am I going to deal with conflict and mediation with others when I can't even navigate my own personal social and human dynamic? We're not teaching and providing the societal components, the tools that they need to be able to heal themselves and restore in that process. So if I'm broken, I'm definitely going to take a broken process to the external environment that I operate from. And then on top of that, if violence is a social means, because the societal structure is saying it is in terms of everything I do, to Richard's point, through the media, through the leadership, through the municipal structure, well, guess what? I'm going to use that to deal with the conflict that I don't have the capacity to deal with because I can't even deal with my own dang conflict.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that it's kind of it's interesting when you talk about conflict and you talk about how that's kind of how we dealt with, you know, we talk about kids, but as adults, I mean, that's how as a culture we deal with conflict.
Hmm.
Is I mean,
Mm-hmm.
with conflict is fighting and war.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, I think it has become so much part of the culture. And, you know, when we talk about the issue of whatever side we fall on as far as the gun control issue, that's going to come back into play
Yes,
Hmm.
it
about
is.
gun control. And, you know, that's an interesting topic because I mean, I obviously, like most people, I believe in the Second Amendment, and I don't think that some sort of gun control doesn't mean that you don't believe in the Second Amendment. You're just talking about maybe more legislation to, you know, control it. But at any rate, please do not touch that dial. We'll continue on the other side of the break with Justice Watch.
Idea for a radio show but have no idea where to start? Or have you been hosting a podcast for a while and want to take it to the next level? If so, you need the Gab Radio Network. To host a show on the Gab Radio Network, all you need is your voice, and we'll handle the rest, from technical engineering to full service audio production and much more. Every show on the Gab Radio Network can be heard on our station on the TuneIn Radio app. Plus, we put all of our shows on our satellite, which is accessed by over 5,500 stations. And here's the best part: you can host from anywhere you want. There are many means to connect to the Gab Radio Network remotely, and our staff of highly trained engineers and producers will make you sound like you're right here in studio. So, if you want to be on the Gab Radio Network, the same network that hosts the Small Business Advocate, Radio MD, and the Federalist, send an email right now to sales@gabradionetwork.com. That's sales@gabradionetwork.com.
Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system. And if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands. Serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew, and our very special guest, Brother Richard Johnson, who's an educator and teacher, who's going to be joining us in this really important discussion about our youth and the issue about, you know, the recent school shootings. And nobody really can, you know, I mean, figure this whole thing out. I mean, why do we see all of this? Is it about the bullying? Obviously, why today when it comes to, and I know that you mentioned earlier that it has to do with kind of our culture, and now, there's so many, I guess, movies and games and stuff like that that kind of show um kids and young people, that's how you deal with the problem. I mean, do you think that's really the main issue?
Well, there's quite a few issues, and I know we don't have time today to touch upon all of them. But if we had to speak to some of the most important key points and most important issues, I would also talk about mental health issues.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health, especially in
Mm-hmm.
education and amongst the Black and Brown community, especially, is something that is stigmatized,
Hmm.
That's right.
where we don't feel all the time that it really or truly exists, and therefore to seek help or to seek the resources to get the help, it's been minimized.
Right.
So that becomes another issue of what that particular person, the issues that they're dealing with mentally. If we're
Hmm.
talking about arguably 4.8 million of Black people who classify themselves as Black people are dealing with mental issues or classified as having some sort of mental health issue,
Hmm.
that is a huge, huge problem. And that's a situation that we have to do a better job in educating people about the resource and how to get help for and meeting those issues head on.
I think one of the things when it comes to mental health issues, and if I could just be, quite honest, I mean, I think that in our community, there is somewhat of a resistance and reluctance to address or to recognize that people are suffering from, mental health issues. I mean, and I'm just going to be completely honest. I was the type of person at some point in time. I felt like, um, especially, sometimes, when we talk about the Stockholm syndrome of what we've experienced in this country as far as what has happened to us in the past, and I struggle with it. I struggle with it just simply because we um tend to, as men, don't want to address the issue that we think that's weak, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it really, I mean, if I can
Mm-hmm.
just be honest, I think many of us, when it comes to the issue of dealing with mental issues, we see that as some sort of sign of weakness. And I think for us, I mean, we really want to make sure that we see ourselves as very strong and powerful people, and we're reluctant to say that. And sometimes we feel like nowadays there's this whole thing that with our kids, we don't want to even accept the fact that there may be something wrong with the kids that we have. You know what I mean? And then
Right.
there's also this idea that we have people from certain communities, especially even some of the nationalist and pan-Africanist community, who believe that they're diagnosing our kids with some of these, well, these are learning disabilities, which is different than having mental issues.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well,
I mean, I recognize it. I see it in my practice as an attorney when when I see young men and some of the things that they get involved in.
yeah.
It's there. Um, but I guess my thing is, you know, how do we as a community start dealing with it within our community? That I think that's kind of one of the things, is that I just feel like maybe, you know, you know, I don't even know how to. Why do we want to depend on other people to help us with our situation?
Mhm.
So it seems like that for us sometimes. Do you want to take this position that, okay, this is kind of what's happening with us, and um, do you transition from see, I'm careful, and I talked about this the other day about victim being a victim,
Mhm.
because sometimes when you appeal to a person's victimization, then the reality of it is that you're a victor. The opposite is a victor or a victim.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think that when we appeal to that, sometimes we perpetuate it so much that we fall into this trap where we feel like, you can't do anything. Does that make sense?
Right. Right.
And so for me, I kind of I don't like going in and just saying, because I believe that if you want someone I mean, I don't want to sound conservative like a Republican and say, pick yourself up by your own bootstraps and go out there and you do
Yeah.
your thing. But at the same time, I think that, I don't think that we should are we babying people too much? Are we appealing to their sensitivity? Can if we appeal to their strengths, will we have? Because we ain't got no choice. What's going on in our community is a crisis at the highest level, and when people feel victimized, there's this fine line between being victimized or
Mhm.
appealing too much to the victimization and teaching people to be strong and dealing with what we are going to have to deal with. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. The way you cannot teach, you cannot make them treat you a certain way. At some point in time, there's no law that can make someone respect you,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yeah.
make someone like you.
Right.
And you may not like me, but you will respect me.
Yes, sir.
And there's a big
Yes, sir.
difference.
Right.
And I think that sometimes, I mean, we have to keep, teach our kids a little bit about that. I know I'm kind of swaying off from the whole thing about the school shooting, but I think it still goes into the idea of the world is never going to be fair to you. The world is never going to treat you the way that you should be treated. None of that is ever going to happen. So how do you put yourself in a space where if in school I'm appealing to your victimization and you're being bullied and you can't handle it, when you go out into the world, and whether you're a teacher or whatever, you're a lawyer or whatever profession you're in, they're going to treat you, you're still going to have to be able to bob and weave
Right.
in life, period.
Yeah. We,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that speaks to some of the things was hot topic right now, social emotional learning. But it goes back even further than that, which, my father did an excellent job parenting as understanding knowledge of self.
Mhm.
That's right.
Knowledge of self is always the truest sense of knowing how to cope with anything.
That's right.
So I don't have to wait on someone
To validate you.
to validate who I am, what I am, or how I do that. Knowledge of self tells you, even when we say why do we wait for other people to teach our kids certain things or to help us with this problem?
Right.
Knowledge of self gives you that knowledge to say, hey, wait a minute. It starts from
It's in
within.
me.
It starts
Mhm.
from within first. And that's something. A lot of the issues and how this thing is going and how it's shaping up, it all goes back to everyone in that village that we're talking about. In this particular thing, no one is clean. When we talk about our kids, everybody has to roll their sleeves up and get their hands in the soil, so to speak. Right. So when we're talking about what that kid thinks about themselves or what they portray, what they see on that television or different things, hey, we have to be able to tell our kids there's such thing as false reality. Right? That's what they're dealing with.
Right.
They're seeing things on television or they're listening to things in music and thinking that that's reality.
Mhm.
That's because they haven't been taught about.
There's a new nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host Attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep Your Hand on the Plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands, serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with Attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew, and our very special guest, Brother Richard Johnson, joining us in this discussion about school shootings, and we're talking a little bit also about bullying. And one of the things I do want to mention, I know that the statistic, at least from what I saw, was that since 2009, there's been 288 school shootings in the United States. Now, you compare it, Canada since 2009 has had 2. France has 1. Germany has 1. Japan, Italy, and UK have 0. So, I mean, that's a big difference. You know what I mean? So, you know, obviously, when you look at those numbers, I think that a lot of people are going to look at their gun control. That they're gonna go back as a. And I don't think it's just that. I think there has to be a realization that there's really something going on in our society that is beyond black and white, obviously, because obviously we're seeing children from all kinds of different, you know, backgrounds that are going to school and doing, you know, shooting people and just killing people, these mass shootings at school. I mean, you know, and I know you want, go ahead. I want you to touch on, you said you wanted to touch on the mental health issue real quick.
Yeah, real quick. You know, Brother Richard just brought that excellent point up, and I think all three of us are fortunate in that we clearly understood and have been trained in the knowledge of self. So when we flip that back over to the mental health issue, why are people in especially black and brown communities, marginalized communities, so defensive against mental health? We've got to look at it from the perspective of admitting to having a mental problem means we're giving our power away. We've been through systematic injustice in this country, stripped of so much of our power. So the last beacon of hope that we have is we have some type of mental sanity, and that we are sound in terms of being able to be productive components of society. So when I admit, on top of all the other things that have been stripped from me, that now I have a mental issue problem, I have a psychological problem. We used to call it back in the day, you crazy. I'm not never going to admit to that unless it's framed different. I think that's so important, because when you talk about the power of self, what does that do? That reinforces the individual power, and you're able to counterbalance that need to try to assimilate some of that power back because it's been so stripped of you. So I think until we create some type of platform to where we can reinstitute the power of self in people, and getting people to understand, as has been so well said by both of you, that the internal energy to move forward in a constructive way is going to stem from you, we're going to keep having these issues, because people are tired of giving up their power, and they don't know what to do when that power is being stripped. So they resort to violence, because in this society, we don't know much of anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I mean that there's so much into that when we start talking about the because it's kind of like with the issue, because there's two, we're talking about two things. I mean, when it comes to the mental issue regarding the issues of the school shootings of young people today in general, and that's one issue. But then when we go to the issue about really what's happening in our own community, then I mean, obviously, that's a completely different issue. Both issues bring up the whole idea of the psychological problems that we're having, and how do we deal with it, and how do we deal with it in a hurry? It
Hmm.
seems like that, unfortunately, the way that we so often deal with the psychological problems or the problems and crises that we have in our communities is that I believe that we don't have time. And I think that oftentimes when we get to, and this is just my own personal opinion, everybody has their own opinion. I think that oftentimes when we're dealing with the crisis, I think that we do a very good job of creating some sort of well put together academic professional a model of how we're going to do all these things, and kind of implement things, and have roundtables and have discussions and figuring out how we're going to do with it. I know, Doc, I know you go to different places and you're on the
Hmm.
ground in different places actually in the communities, which I mean I applaud that effort and the work, but I mean that's how we have to stop talking. Like every time that there's a crisis, there's a panel action.
Hmm. Hmm.
We, you know what I'm saying. I mean,
Right.
we need
Hmm.
to figure out. I mean, to me, things are a crisis. I really don't have. I mean, it's like, do people
Hmm.
really understand what's really happening in our communities?
No.
And the fact that we're so far behind in so many different things, and trying to figure out how we're going to do it. And we've tried so many different things, I think historically, in trying to deal with the crisis in our communities, not only just violence of what we saw with this young man in the school, but the way that we take this violence in our own communities.
Hmm.
And I think that in order for us to really start trying to make some sort of progress, then we're going to have to, at some point in time, realize that much of what we need to do is going to be on us. And much of what
Yes.
we have in our
Yes.
community, the biggest psychosis that we have, is how we feel about each other.
Right.
I mean, we have so much
Yes.
self-hatred in our community. I
Teach.
think that's the main
Teach.
psychosis that we have, is the envy and the jealousy. And it's just unbelievable, how we treat each other. You know what I mean? And sometimes
Yes.
we don't. Sometimes we see people who look like us. We oftentimes see their success as our failure. When you go, I mean, we have.
Hmm.
I mean, think about this. This is what trips me out. I mean, they make YouTube videos that gets many, 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 many views of comedians beefing with each other,
Mhm. All right. Right.
or artists beefing with each other.
Mhm.
you know, I mean, that's a psychosis.
Right. Right.
You know, I
Right.
mean, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you never see anyone else doing that.
Right.
That's what, you know what I mean?
Well, and I agree. One of the things that I say is, and here's a question we'll throw out there. Uh, we can go out there and protest about anything,
Hmm.
but what is the difference between a protest and a movement?
Right.
Right.
Hmm.
And that's the thing. We can protest and burn down our neighborhoods, and
Mhm.
tomorrow they'll let it pan out and die down.
That's right.
But what makes the movement? For us to deal with school shootings, mental health, and different things as a community, Black and brown people, it has to be a movement which takes proper planning and it takes time,
Mhm.
right? Proper preparation prevents poor performance. We all know that.
Right.
But one of the things that has to be done is we understand the whole movement aspect of it. When we talk about the civil rights movement and we talk about what Dr. King and Abernathy and all those guys were doing, the movement, when they said, hey, we have nonviolent workshops before we get to the part where we're out on the streets, we have to make sure everyone understands about what it means to be nonviolent
Mhm.
and why that is important to our movement,
Mhm.
and how that's going to force that tension, that's going to force those negotiations. The tension that we have, we're not forcing any tension to even bring about conversation, right? We have monologues where we're being told certain things, but there's no dialogue where we're talking about our situation, such as that's what we're doing here and what we're trying to do right now. Our dialogue, we have to do something that's going to be a movement to create that tension, as Dr. King said in his letter from Birmingham jail, right? We're doing this to create that tension out there, to create negotiations that's going to stand behind our movement,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, to, you know, when you sit back and you think about the relationships that other communities have and how they move with each other, and how we in on the lowest level, I mean, so let's just say Doc decides um to go out and say, hey, we're going to go out here and we're going to do something. You know, and he's trying to help what he's doing is for the community, right? You know, people are going to hate him for that. I mean, people, they will try to dismantle what he's doing, and the people that's going to be trying to dismantle it is not the man. There's people that are going to say, you know,
Yep.
you know, he's the HNIC. I mean, who do he think he is?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
I
Real
mean,
talk.
if we can't get past that, I mean, that's a huge issue. That is really, if we could do something about that, we could move. No matter what they're doing, you know, externally.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get past this whole idea or this whole issue of how we, you know, everybody has to be the guy in charge, right? And there's so much even in organizations and
Yes,
even in
sir.
business
Yes, sir.
and things. I mean, there's people that and I'm just going to put it out there that and it's not everybody, but there's a lot of people out there that as a Black lawyer will marginalize and undervalue
That's right.
you
That's right.
just because
Yes, sir.
you know what I mean. They'll come in there and, you know, they'll go to someone else that doesn't look like me and pay them twice as much money and never
Yes,
say a
sir.
word.
Yes, sir.
And then, you know, and then you get them out of it, they want some money back. They go over there, it's like yes or no, sir. You know, it's like we still haven't gotten out of that whole situation of, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Real
it's
talk.
crazy.
Real talk.
You have community leaders beefing
Mhm.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
because everybody wants to make sure that even as a community leader that they got a closer relationship to master than the other dude. I mean,
It's not
it's
funny, but you know, it's
it's
comical
wild.
when you
But at
think
any rate,
about
please do
it.
not touch that dial. We'll be back on the other side of the break with Justice Watch.
There's a new nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a Black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com. Nubian Pictures presents a CCM Films production documentary entitled Purpose and Freedom. Keep Your Hand on the Plow. This emotional and strong documentary tells the story of African-American lawyer Zulu Ali seeking justice and his purpose as a lawyer while crossing paths with Araceli, an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who is seeking her freedom. Together, they help discover their purpose and freedom in each other. Watch this incredible film today from iTunes Movies, YouTube Movies, Amazon Prime, and Google Play Movies. Learn about the cast and crew, links to purchase, and more at purposeandfreedommovie.com. Purpose and Freedom. Keep your hand on the plow. Available now. Rated G.
I did not feel safe. That's why I decided to come to California, because I didn't feel safe in Mexico.
It's kind of like the system, and if you go outside the system, then it becomes a struggle.
Are you an immigrant seeking defense representation and are looking to protect your rights? Or maybe someone who is experiencing an injustice or discrimination and need a lawyer you can trust? Well, that's exactly why you need the help of award-winning trial lawyer Zulu Ali. The law offices of Zulu Ali provides immigration defense representation for those seeking justice and looking to protect their rights. If you or a loved one needs professional legal advice and representation, then contact Zulu Ali. Zulu Ali's firm focuses on criminal law, family law, civil and personal injury, and international law. Zulu Ali is a former police officer and U.S. Marine, so you know you're in good hands, serving all of California and immigration cases nationwide, representing victims and suspects at the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Call Zulu Ali today at 888-682-3049 or visit ZuluAliLaw.com.
Welcome back to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali and the Justice Watch crew and our very special guest, Brother Richard Johnson, to speak on this issue of the school shooting. And we got into some other issues before we went to the break. But you know, it needs to be said, because, I mean, we're looking for solutions, right? Is that you, Rosa?
Yeah, and I've been listening the whole segment.
Rosa.
Waiting to kind of add a little, bit of my perspective from. I think I couldn't agree more. That we have this problem of competition within our own communities. Sadly, between full-grown adults, and this is what our youth are looking at.
Yeah.
But we also have the issue of ageism in our nation.
Mm-hmm.
Even when there is a movement that strongly identifies the issues within its community and the solutions to issues like school shootings. You talk about the Parkland students that took it all the way to the White House.
Mm-hmm.
Adults are not listening.
Yeah.
At the core, adults do not believe it. The fact that we sit here and have to ask ourselves, we need to get rid of the stigma surrounding mental health.
Mm-hmm.
We can't keep asking ourselves, are these kids really sick mentally, when they're literally coughing up bullets?
Mm-hmm.
They're shooting up their schools. What else? What cry for help? What cry from them do we need for them to let us know that we need to address these issues?
Mm-hmm.
We need to train our communities on mental health aid.
Right.
We haven't babied this generation.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, they're growing into communities that are dealing with education crises, healthcare crises,
Mm-hmm.
and many other more crises that they were born into, an era of political crisis and divisiveness,
Yeah.
an era where they see and they have at the reach of their computer or their cell phone a police officer putting their knee on a black man,
Mhm.
where they become desensitized to this violence because they have it at their hands whenever they want.
Mhm.
They can watch a video of somebody shooting up a school. They can go on these websites like 4chan and whatnot, where they literally see the video of people executing, committing all these crimes.
Right.
We need to realize that social media has definitely exacerbated the mental health crises that are within our community.
Mhm.
And we need to stop as adults asking ourselves,
Yeah.
if these kids are sick, we need to ask ourselves, how can we help them? And they're screaming out, look, these are the solutions that we have for our schools, for our communities, but
Mhm.
nobody's listening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, and it's kind of, yeah, that is an interesting thing because now when we talk about entertainment, you hear about a lot of the rappers who say basically in order to get a record deal, like nowadays, many of the things that you're seeing, I mean, the record executives control what goes out there. And a lot of what they're allowing to go out there is the negativity and many of the positive stuff. Like, you hear these guys saying that, nowadays anything that's negative, they're going to promote it. You can't get a record deal if you came out saying something, you know, uh, powerful or something positive. They're only going to let you have a record deal if you're going to say, something negative.
Right.
In many of these cases. So, it's not, and they create, and, marketing is a very powerful thing.
Yes, it is.
These people just don't put things out. They research it. They have psychologists. They have people who are trained and they research and study human behavior. And when they start marketing these things, they with the same energy they could do it differently. So they control. So for us, what culture to them is product to them.
Right.
It's what we think is our culture. They see it as a product.
Yep.
And so a lot of times when we think about, for example, hip hop, people in our community, there's people say it's our culture. You know what I mean? I mean, that's our culture. That's something that's part of us and our fabric. And it's something that's, we have people that we call legends in our community who are part of that community. But for them, those individuals, it's not culture. For them, it's selling. I mean, everybody wants our rhythm, but nobody wants our blues. Right?
Right.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
There
Like
you go.
that
Well, it goes
analogy.
and it goes back to from that educational mindset of how we're being taught about ourselves. And we talked about the book, and say it again, and I'm in love with this book, Stamp. Kendi and Reynolds does an excellent job of going back through history and talking about that culture and talking about why things are the way they are and why they want our rhythm but not our blues.
Right.
And this is directly in that book, and I'll give a plug for the book, but in terms of the learning and how we learn what our culture has become, they do excellent job on that and where we start. But again, I cannot stress enough that for us to get into this situation with school shooting and even how we look at ourselves, that starts with how the community works together and how we start when they are children and how we teach them at home.
Right. That's it. I mean, we have to do a serious paradigm shift. We have to stop doing things the way that we do them. And I mean, if we can't, come together and everybody's going to have their own way of doing things. I mean, we are a community that is put together primarily based upon the way our history, the way we've been treated. I mean, we're the only people. I mean, it's like, for example, an entire continent. We have to have a movement where the entire continent, because that's how they treat us. They only see the physical characteristics.
Right.
So we have to develop a way to deal with it based solely on physical characteristics. I was telling someone the other day, when they talk about Asians. Well, there is no Asian movement. There's Koreans, there's Vietnamese, there are people from Taiwan, there's people from, these people don't see each other as the same.
Right.
That's right.
That you may see them as the same, but Africa is 52 countries. And because you've had, people from the outside that has targeted everyone who has Africa in them the same, then we have to come together. Nigerians and people from Ghana are not the same. Nigerians and Tanzanians are not the
That's
same.
right.
Well, that's what we speak to in terms of the person who controls the pen. The person that controls the pen writes the narrative, and we have to be equipped with writing our own narrative. And that's why I tell these young brothers and sisters that are really getting into writing and getting into our English courses, you have the power to write our own narrative. We have the power right now to change that. But until we document it, it means nothing.
There's a saying, the story will always favor the hunter until the lion learns to write.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and so one of the things that we have to deal with is that we have to come to the realization that whatever we come up with is that we have to, you can't, if someone brings a gun to a knife fight, you're going to lose that fight.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to stop. I mean, some things you got to change. And one of the things that we have to change is that when it comes to the whole issue, when we talk about economic development, you can't, you can do whatever you want to. You can be a cultural nationalist as much as you much as you want to. Cultural nationalism is not going to help our people. A dashiki is not going to help you. You're going to, if you got to deal with the enemy. Right, I can come with a knife all day long, but if they got a gun, you know what I mean, I'm gonna get shot.
You spot on, brother.
Anyway, man, thank you so much, man, for joining us today, man. We really
thanks
appreciate
for having me again. I appreciate what you guys are doing.
All right, we'll see you next week, same time, same.
There's a new nationally syndicated radio program that's sweeping the nation, and you don't want to miss it. Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali, the voice of justice for the people. The focus of Justice Watch is to provide an honest analysis and viable solutions to the criminal and social justice crisis in America and the world from a black, brown, working class, and socially disadvantaged perspective, and to motivate listeners to be informed and part of the solution. Zulu Ali is joined by the Justice Crew, consisting of Rosa Nunez, Michael Clark, Dr. Akil Bashir, and Charito Ali to tackle the most pressing issues. Host attorney Zulu Ali is a former police officer, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and an award-winning trial lawyer who focuses on representing persons accused of crimes, immigrants, victims of discrimination, and persons seeking civil justice. Find out how to listen to Justice Watch with attorney Zulu Ali at justicewatchradio.com.
You're on board KCAA's Inland Talk Express. KCAA, Loma Linda, 1050 AM, the station that leaves no listener behind.